Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. Our guest today, Matt Kuehlhorn of Kooler Garage Doors, literally has cool in his name, joining us straight up from Colorado. What's up, brother? How you doing?
So good, Brandon. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you bet. So also building a multi-8-figure exit business. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. Very cool. Love garage doors. Love the industry. Love the business. Knowing you a little personally behind the scenes as well, understanding mindset and entrepreneurship is top of mind. Also, host of the Craft Your Life podcast, where you're helping. And the idea, right, crafting a life that you can die for, right, is the idea.
Life worth dying for.
Craft a beautiful life worth dying for.
Yeah.
Matt, so great to have you. Why don't you? I know I introduced you, but it just doesn't really do you justice for the listeners out there. Why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, appreciate it, man. No, I'm beaming in from Western Colorado right now. There's a little rainstorm in the desert, so as I look out on my yard, it's pretty special. I love the rain in the desert, and I've been out in Colorado for decades. I grew up in Michigan, but really a Chicago, Michigan, Midwest kid. Came out to Colorado, finished education. My background's really in education and nonprofit leadership, and when Kooler started, I was about to go broke again, and we can talk about any of that, but I wasn't a tradesman necessarily out of the gate, so I had a lot of stuff to figure out, but the vehicle of Kooler found me, and once I saw it, I jumped in full-heartedly, and just 10 years later, here we are. And I have a deep-seated mission now of really using this vehicle to build myself, to build my family, and to build community. And I think it can absolutely be a vehicle for that. I think my culture of my team attests to that. And it's worth something to grow it. Like, it is my duty to continue moving this forward and bringing this to other communities. So I'm just really excited. Yeah, I don't know where else to go from there, but I think I'll leave it there, because we'll go into some other different zones in our conversation.
Yeah, let's talk about culture for a minute, right? Culture and community. Let's go back a step further, because you said your background was really in nonprofit work, and where were you before Kooler Doors? I know you had a bit of a painting career prior to that, but let's talk about a little bit before the vehicle of Kooler Doors ended up finding.
Yeah, so I'll take a couple steps back. And first, Kooler started as Kooler Painting. That was the painting career. And then prior to that, I had an LLC. I mean, I have a graveyard of LLCs, and some of them paid some money, some of them didn't. In 2012, right when Colorado legalized cannabis, I became the director of the Gunnison County's Substance Abuse Prevention Project. And this was a culmination of a lot of different stuff that I was doing. So out of college, I went into experiential ed, and I was a guide. I was in Hawaii, Alaska, Southern California, and I was leading education trips for some adults, but a lot of youth and middle schoolers. And we'd go rock climbing for 5 days, or backpacking, or rafting, or sea kayak, and it was awesome. But in that experience, I was teaching life skills along with nature skills, right? Like how you climb a rock face wall, has a lot to do with how you navigate the challenges in your classroom or with family.
Yeah.
And so I loved that. I loved bringing those analogies and figuring out how to bring that back to a human's life and make meaning around it, because we're such story makers anyway. And so that proceeded to go into where I didn't want to just guide anymore, because I was living out of my car, and I was looking to anchor down, and I ended up back in Crested Butte. And at that point, I got in with the Adaptive Sports Center. I started doing some mentoring work, and mentoring led into drug prevention. Drug prevention taught me about marketing, because that's all it is, really.
Yeah.
And then once I had attained goals, and so I love having goals and I love achieving things. And as an employee, I had like 2-year runs, and then I would start butting heads with leadership wherever I was. And I just saw this after 10 years. I was like, there's 2 years, there's 2 years, there's 2 years. All right, my 2 years is up. And that happened with the county. I attained some goals of financial stuff because I was hired to bring in grants. And so I figured out how to write grants, and we were very successful. That was a community coalition, and I brought in community members, and we built a thing that was really around supporting the youth and how do we shift an environment to change just how parents talk to kids, how kids talk to parents around all things substances and risky behaviors. So I attained goals, and I noticed that I was butting heads with leadership again. So I excused myself. I was like,
Why are you butting heads with leadership? What's going on there?
it's part of my personality, man.
Yeah.
And this is what I've recognized, with more and more years, I get more and more self-awareness. And so I just love achieving. I love running my own thing. I love autonomy. And that's literally what happened is, I would get into a role and I would love it because I'd be learning. And then I would, in theory, in my own naive way, master that role. And so with the county, like I attained $1 million in grant funding, and I was like, all right, I don't have anything else to achieve right now. Like I didn't have any leader that was stepping in front of me like, hey, Matt, great job on $1 million. Like, good job. But what about 100?
Mhm.
And there was no like reset. And so I just started like looking for change. And I'm like, well, we could do this, we could do that. And then back then I was like, well, what if I'm the drug prevention guy that actually enjoys a cannabis, cigarette every so often? Can I speak about that publicly? And leadership wasn't ready for that. And I was like, okay, I just need to see myself out. I ended up starting an entity that was going to, I did a lot of networking with the new cannabis industry at that time. That's crazy little stories here and there. But I had this entity that I had as a nonprofit. It went for profit. I got a grant from the Drug Policy Alliance. I just didn't have a real revenue driver. So I was about to go broke again. And that was May 2015 when I ended up contracting my first house for Kooler.
Why were you living in your car the first time?
Well,
Why
that
were you living in
was,
your car? You mentioned that.
yeah. So that was the lifestyle. That was just awesome because I was post college and I was just broke, and I was living the guide's life. And so I just had a station wagon, and I would drive the way that lifestyle works, and it still does to this day. You could look at Knowles or Outward Bound, and I was at an institute similar. During the season, during the fall and spring seasons was when the work was on. And so I would just go to Southern California, and at that point the institute that I was working at would put us all up. They would board us. So I didn't have to have a house. And then in the off season, through the winters or the summer I would cruise back to Michigan, and I would work at an awesome resort that I just lived at. And in the winters, I spent a couple solid winters of simply camping out in Joshua Tree, and I would just like post up and bounce around. And so it was the beatnik like rock climber lifestyle. I had my
Yeah.
guitar, station wagon, and zero responsibility, and $1,000 limit on my credit card. We would just go months broke, and it was awesome.
So it was by
Fully by
choice. It
choice.
wasn't
By choice.
wasn't because you were driven there by an unfortunate circumstance and
Fully by
the
choice.
market turning. Yeah,
That's
no.
right. That's
And
right.
so then we get into painting. There was it was Kooler painting for a while, and then into
Yeah.
garage doors. Why the painting? I know a lot of people that have pretty successful painting companies, but what was the draw from painting over to garage doors? What did that transition look like?
Yeah, that is just, again, part of my personality of loving change for change's sakes and wanting to grow. And so when I had left the county, I worked on this entity, Community Thrive, that ended up not paying any bills. So I was running out of money, had two small kids at home and a beautiful wife, and we were just scrapping it together. And at that point, I was like, okay, I got to get some money. And I had a buddy that just offered me 20 bucks an hour to come roll out the walls of a spec house. And so I've done some painting in the past, but I've never been a painter. And so I'm in his place, I'm rolling out the walls, and he's like, yeah, and by the way, like my wife will probably cut in the corners because she's really picky on that. And so I took that as a challenge. I was like, yeah, right, I'm going to learn this. And
Yeah.
so I did some research and called people, and it started this little bit of momentum, like, okay, if there's a challenge, I can figure it out. And it started building a little bit of confidence. And I'm in the house and I'm working at night, I'm working in the day, and I'm just rolling walls, 20 bucks an hour, but I'm getting a little bit of confidence going. And I'm like, huh, I get this immediate satisfaction. Like, here's a bare wall and I paint it. Okay, that's cool. And now I got a tight corner. That's like, oh, that's cool. And somehow, talking about a divine intervention, potentially, I hear from an old landlord, and my wife Annie and I had lived at this place, iconic landmark in Gunnison. It was the ski fence house. That's where our first daughter was born, in the living room. And we spent years there, and it was a beautiful place. And that landlord was looking for somebody to paint her house, but couldn't get anybody to call her back. And I was like, God, I can call her back. And so I cut a deal.
Light bulb moment. Let's
Yeah.
call let's call our leads. Let's call our
Yes.
customers that want
It,
us to
yeah,
perform the
it's
work that we
yeah,
want
it,
that they want.
you know this. It is still the easy thing that anybody can do anytime, and it's the lowest bar to do. Just call people back. Um, but I got a hold of Betsy and cut a deal. And so without a dime, I started Cooler Painting. And that deal was an $8,500 deal for, like a 3,200 square foot house, and it was asbestos shingles, had lead paint on the windowsills. I got my EPA light, like I did everything right. I did the research, came up with a number. It was probably too low, but it had the start. And I took $2,000 that formed my LLC, got my $5 logo. The
Yeah.
name came off the hockey jersey that's back here. The Cooler was my nickname, and I was just off and running. Like
Yeah.
I got a screened shirt with my logo on it just right away. The second day that I was on the job, I had a guy that I hired for $25 an hour for a day so I could learn how to use a sprayer. Like, I
Yeah.
bought a $400 pump, but didn't know how to use it. So
Yeah.
it was just grinding, bootstrapped, right? And then the combination of doors, it was one of my transitions that I had a run with a local garage door company, and I worked for them like a year. And it was enough just to, like, for an arrogant Matt to be like, oh, I can do that too.
Run up
So
against leadership. I could do it better, man.
yeah,
I
that's
can grow
right.
this thing. Let me go.
That's
Let me
right.
fly.
So I had a little bit of traction with painting, and the company that I worked for ran out of town. And that was like, they left in '07, '08. So we're a number of years later. Nobody's really picking up that niche. So I just saw it, put two and two together. I had a little traction with paint, and there was one other player of garage doors. I was like, I'm going to put doors together too, and we'll do garage doors because I've seen that. I know how to install it. Like, I knew enough to be dangerous for sure. But that's how those two came together.
And never look back.
Yeah.
Always
Never
look.
look back, because then, in year one, like, we closed the books, the first 6 months at 400. Year two, we closed the books at like 750. Year three was over a mil. And then I just got more and more dumb, if you will. But in order for me to learn, I have to go touch fire. So I got into different realms of painting. We were exterior, we were interior. I did cabinets, we did high-end finishes, which I should never have been in custom homes. And then, we got garage doors. We started doing garage door overlays. We did garage flooring. We did garage storage. I went way wide before learning the niche and the focus and the power of that is exponential.
What do you do when if you have a member on your team that you recognize is sort of a little like you, right? They're coming up to a couple of years. They've done the best, that they can in the business, and they are looking for more. And maybe they're trying to get more out of you, trying to get more out of the leader, trying to get more out of the company, and essentially grow themselves. If you see that in another staff member, somebody that's a part of your team, and they're getting to that point, what runs through your head at that moment?
I love that question. And I love seeing that, because to me that speaks into leadership, vision, and it will always tie back into culture. And so with my team, I encourage feedback, and I'm looking for individuals that can come at me. And I use a tool called the Predictive Index. Predictive Index, Culture Index. It's a personality assessment that has a lot of accuracy to it. But one of the indicators on there is measuring autonomy. So I'm just going to reference that with a right align A versus left align A. Left align A folks love to be part of teams, and they are into it for the team winning. Right align A's love also to be team winnings, but those are the folks that really want to achieve. And so I'm a right align A player. Now, as a right align A player, I can absolutely lead other right align A players. And that could be to a point. If somebody came on and was a way right align A player beyond me, I would already know that this is going to be a short-term game. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to take them to a point. Maybe they're young. Maybe they don't have the background. Maybe question mark, question mark, question mark. And unless I can constantly challenge and constantly lead them, they will start butting heads with leadership, and they will need to go. And that's just something I know all too well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so really when somebody comes, and I love the challenge, like if somebody's going to come challenge me, I first of all embrace it. I have massive gratitude, and then I just employ curiosity and dig into understanding where and why. And likely they have a great idea. Maybe they have great execution. Maybe some part of that needs some coaching. But part of my job to hold the container for our culture is to have a vision big enough for people to move around. Mm-hmm. And that is a constant evolution for Matt, and a constant challenge of how do I constantly think bigger and employ risks in a smart way that offers bigger opportunities for folks.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Like what is your process for painting that bigger vision for yourself? Because as an owner of an organization, if you want to have great people working for you, then you need to be able to cast a vision big enough so that their visions can fit inside that vision. Otherwise, if you can't help them deliver on what it is that they need and what it is that they're looking to do, chances are they're not going to stick around very long. That's and true. As you develop new skills yourself, as you manage different market conditions, as you're looking for new opportunities as the owner of the company, growing that, how do you, Matt, paint that vision and expand that vision and know what is possible inside of you, and how do you deploy that vision to you? Because you have a great culture, but how do you deploy that vision to your staff, to your leadership team, to the people around you?
There's a component of identity, and I can go into that a bit more, but I'm going to just land some bullet points. There's identity, there is communication, and then there's what I would call agitation. And I'm going to start with agitation first, because that is reading books, that is interacting with people that are playing at levels that I am not playing at yet. And that's interacting with players that have bigger shops, whether it's an actual shop tour, going to conferences, talking with 8-figure and 9-figure business owners getting in different masterminds, groups. That kind of stuff is agitating the normal thoughts that I would have. And that's really important to shake it up. Books for me are awesome. I love reading books. And um, there's massive ones that can just agitate thought. It's like, oh man, I didn't even think about that. Right. I can learn from people that are in HVAC. I can learn from people that are running car mechanic shops or retail shops. There's always something. And so I'm constantly looking for who to connect with next to get that agitation, to shake up my own thinking. There's communication, and that to me is on a daily basis. And we have very intentional meetings, and every Monday morning is the Monday mindset meeting. And I just love that because I think about it all weekend. I'm already thinking about it. It's Friday afternoon. I'm thinking about it for this Monday because I come in and I'm like, I want to be very intentional with how I communicate. And every day I get an opportunity to talk with my team. I can speak with them individually or as a group, and I'm constantly communicating some level of vision, some level of values. We're talking on, September 12th. And so 9/11 was remembered yesterday. There were some other big, heavy incidences that happened this week. And I'm bringing that to my team in order to land and identify with more clarity Kooler's values and leadership and how we want to interact with our customers. That is just something constant. And then it's identity. And the identity for me gets broken down into what do I tell myself? What do I want to believe about myself? And then what am I actually doing? And in that realm, I want to constantly be at the edge of my comfort zone. In other words, I want to be learning. And so we have a value of, learn 1% or more every day of, for improvement. I take that into my nutrition, my health, my relationships, and then it drives into systems and making these little 1% improvements. Now, I'm completely human. I mess this up quite a bit, but I strive for it. And the identity piece is really around being a consistent learner and knowing that if I find myself getting comfortable, I'm going to fight against my own mediocrity, and that's going to spur me forward to do something. And so I'm going to put this in a real perspective because I moved to Grand Junction last year. So this is 13 months ago. I didn't plan on moving. It happened. This was another kind of thing that just bubbled up, and it was meant to be, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. In the moment, I loved it because there's a massive amount of change. And now I'm in Grand Junction, which is a much larger market. It's still small, but it's a much larger market than I began in. And we're focused into one shop. And now we can really play ball and we can go into a new market, and I'm all for it. In a short amount of time, I look around and Kooler is leading the market. We're the biggest player. And so now it's like, all right, how big do we grow? Well, we're going to hit a ceiling at some point in Grand Junction. So now I'm watching and I'm having self-awareness, and this is going for maybe a couple months. I'm like, like we can't double again in this market. How big do we grow? Do we add another line? Like what's going to happen? And what I was recognizing was that my vision was too small. I read some books, talked to some people, got some agitation. I went back to just how I believe and think and my own identity. And what would really freak me out is putting a goal together to 10x this thing in the next 3 years. It seems impossible, but because of that, it's also possible on some level. I just don't know how yet. And in order to do that, I have to think differently. I have to become a different version of Matt. And now it's an achievement that I can rally behind. So there's some other metrics that I want to achieve, but really to stay engaged, to stay focused, I just have to go bigger. I have to think bigger and expand a vision. So then I now have something exciting to recruit people into. I can engage current players. I can challenge current players to play and think and be different and just keep growing. And so it all circles back into those three.
How do you recognize when you're getting comfortable and when you feel like that differentiating factor of I feel like things are on track, this is good, but also this feels too normal. So I'm going to go and like do what every entrepreneur tends to do and just go and create a bunch of chaos for their, their team to build out and team to clean up and be like, okay, everything is going really good. All right, we have a minute here where we can breathe. All right, let's fuck that up. Like, let's go. What are the signs that you know inside of you when you're starting to get comfortable? Do you start recognizing? Is it your brain starts getting busy? Is it you're like a physical feeling in your gut? Like something, there's always something. I mean, for me, when I start getting comfortable, I start getting edgy. And that to me tells me, okay, if I'm starting to get edgy, then something needs to happen. And there's a lot that's usually going to happen in a very short period of time. There's going to be some big moves that are going to be made in a very short period of time because of that agitation that you're talking about. But how do you recognize those signs? And for most leaders, what would you tell them if you're starting to get comfortable? This is cool. Chill out for a minute, take a beat, or just let it rip. Right? Go break some shit.
Yeah. So there's some nuance here, Brandon, because am I getting comfortable and not being okay with that simply because my nervous system really loves chaos and change for change's sakes? Or is it because I just recognize that mediocrity is seeping in and there's more in the tank? And this is something I've been working to distill as I play this out. For me, I simply feel bored, anxious, or just not driven. And if the vision gets small enough, or if I achieve goals and I don't reset, then it's really just that not driven. Like to me, it would feel stuck, and it would feel like Groundhog Day. And I'd wait and I'd do it and I'd be like, but I also recognize, like, today's a great example where in some ways, I don't know if I did a whole lot. Like I did some important things, but there's a distinct difference, and this goes back to when I was learning the skill set of getting out of the truck. Like I was very hands-on until recently, and I love getting out in the field and I love doing, right? And there's a feeling of doing and like, oh man, at the end of the day, I'm sweaty, tired, my hands hurt. Like it feels good because X, Y, and Z is done, right? There's a amount of production there. Now I can do even more valuable production, but it doesn't have that same physical feeling these days. Like maybe it's important meetings. Maybe I set up a marketing campaign or just developed a message. Now we're going to run the message forward. And that stuff has massive value. It just feels different. And so I had to get my nervous system really accustomed to that. And it's similar, where some of my days are comfortable and I have to just recognize that is normal and healthy, and it allows space for the next level of growth. But I don't have to make it mean that I'm stuck or I'm not growing. And so differentiating between those two is kind of the learning curve of where I'm at. Like, how do I keep moving myself forward and creating opportunities for my team? Because that's the inspiring piece these days for me, without driving it because it's simply conditioned response to go grind myself into the ground.
Let me ask you how do you feel? Like what goes on inside of you if somebody approaches you and says, "Hey Matt, like you're super successful. You've done ABC. Congrats. Like, what does it feel like to be so successful?" If somebody approaches you with that conversation, because I know how that makes me feel, but I'm curious to see what goes on in your mind.
Yeah, I laugh and I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you gotta be, I'm a peon. I've just started. Like, I have so much more to prove. And there's a fine line of like, I think maybe I got this from Hormozy. Like, a lot of the successful people will be driven by an insecurity of some sort. And I think it's super true for me. Like I have a lot of proof these days and I can anchor myself in confidence and competence. And at the same time, just feel like, I haven't done anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it resonates with me when people have had that conversation, because somewhere deep down, like I just don't believe it, because there's this definition of success or growth that you as an entrepreneur may want to get to, and it's this idea that you have it. It means like, okay, well, does that mean the game's over? Does that mean that business is over and this is all that we're going to be able to do? Is this as far as we're going to be able to go? Is this the best of the potential that I have inside of me is going to allow me to perform? And there's that little switch that, like, if somebody gives me that feedback, it just, yeah, it's just like, back to what you said, I just don't believe it, because I think we're only as good as our last at bat, and you have to be constantly evolving, and our capacity expands at our extremities. And so once you've reached a certain capacity, like, you have to be continuously expanding outside of, what you think you possibly can do, in order to understand that you can go further and you can take it further. And it's a blessing and a curse.
Sure.
For, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, and I think just people in general, right? Just anybody. It doesn't have to be a business owner. It doesn't have to be anybody in an entrepreneurial position. Anybody in their life. I think that people, they want to continue to do better. Most people want to continue to grow. They want to better their financial situation. They want to better their connection with their husband, their wife, their kids, whatever that is. And so if somebody says, oh man, you have such a great relationship with your daughter, or you have such a great relationship with your wife. It's like, yeah, but there's some things that you don't see, and there's some things that we can work on, but it does force you to think about what those relationships are like and how successful they really are, and what you can continue to work on as a person. And I think that's just, for a lot of people, ever evolving in perpetuity throughout life.
I agree. I think it's part of a human condition to always feel like we're not enough. And there's also a skill set to employ of receiving that feedback and learning how to say thank you and allow it to land. And, potentially this is more of a thing for men than women, but I think it applies for everybody. Just the art of receiving. It's hard. It's hard for me to receive. So if I get a compliment and I simply say, thank you, and I let it land, that now allows that person to fully send their gift. And so I've been learning how to accept that. And that goes into unraveling beliefs around money, around abundance, around good enough. And it gets me out of comparison, right? Like, comparison is the thief of joy. I can look around and be like, oh man, they have X, Y, Z. Oh man, they're farther along. Oh man, whatever. And that could just be a thief of my joy and presence. And so I think it's a little bit of a skill set, like, to let some of that stuff be like, thank you. Yeah, I have come a long way. Man, this is amazing.
I think comparison, and people say that, right? Comparison can be the thief of joy, but also comparison, it can agitate, right? So back to what you're talking about, right? You're going to conferences, you're meeting other companies that are doing bigger, better things, the things that you're wanting to do. Somebody that's done it, and you're like, like, we're not there yet, but we can do better. Like, we're not
That's right.
in that role. So comparison, I think it can be both a blessing and a curse, right? It can certainly steal your joy, but I think it's a really interesting skill set that's required, or mindset that's required, as to how you're going to take that, right? And I think that you can take it in a couple ways. You're like, man, I'm nowhere near this. There's no way I'm going to get to this level. I'm just so defeated. I hate my life. I hate like this. What am I doing all this for? Shut it down. Like we're gone.
Yes,
I'm no good. Right? That's like that thief of joy. But if you can appreciate what's gone in and know and say, even if it's not allowed, but you're able to say to yourself, like, thank you for showing me this. Thank you for showing me a clearer path. Thank you for showing me another way. Thank you for showing me what's possible. Even if that's just internal and you're talking to, talking to yourself, talking to your creator, talking to like whatever that may be, that's a bit of a mind shift. And you're not necessarily hating on yourself for the accomplishments that you have or the accomplishments that you're striving for, but it is that agitator, right, where it's just enough to like, okay, I need to kick things up a bit. I need to get some fire under my ass. I haven't been as consistent with the things that I said I'm going to be consistent with. I haven't been keeping the promises that I've been making myself in private. I haven't been doing the best I can. I have more in the tank, and sometimes it takes comparison on some level to really fire you up.
for sure. And you're employing a skill set in there when you are recognizing the use of gratitude, because in order to have that be a healthy drive, there is some gratitude. And I would say, for me, the comparison of Matt 2 years ago or Matt 10 years ago, like that is super motivating because I can see very distinct differences. Now, if I look at, I don't know, I think of Paul or Tom or, whoever, I'm like, oh man, maybe these guys are younger and they have bigger companies. Well, I don't know the amount of pain they went through to achieve that. I don't know X, Y, and Z. I don't know what's under the cover. And if I see that, I could look at it in a negative way and be like, oh, why am I not that far along? Like, how did they do that? And get woe is me kind of deal. But if I employ gratitude, it's like, oh, thank you for allowing me to see that. Now I'm in a space of abundance. I can applaud them, be like, way to go. This is amazing. Like, what were some of the steps? And now I'm like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I can rip off and duplicate and go get it, right? Like, there's so much luck. There's so much weird nuance to business and how it unfolds and market timing and vehicles. And oh my gosh, the levers that are available to us in business are infinite. And there's not a right way, wrong way. There's all these different ways that we could run and structure our own business, which makes business such a fun game. And it's completely infinite. And so it's this habit of gratitude, just stay in the game, no matter how hard it gets.
The growth of Kooler, right, has been it started out just with you and this idea and building this, and how when you're looking at how Kooler has been doing and you've reached new heights and new plateaus, what do you find that you're implementing to see real growth, right? So what I mean is it people? I'd like to talk about people. Is it systems? Is it like just like tactically? Is it getting a very clear CRM system? Is it moving people, making sure that they're on the right seat of the bus? Is it culture? Like with these bigger growths, anytime you've seen bigger leaps, what do you know now that you've put in place that you would have put in place faster had you understood that it was going to get you this result?
Yeah. Beautiful question. It comes down to people and systems. And I'd probably put them in that order. I referenced the Predictive Index, that personality assessment. When that came into my sphere of awareness, I started using that. What that did was gave me an accurate tool of different personalities, and different personalities can employ gas, which means like help revenue, employ brakes, which means help profit, or employ glue, which is around culture and stickiness. And as I understood that and saw my team at that moment, I was like, we must make changes. I love people, and I love, I'm a former pleaser. So when I first started Kooler, I was bringing people on and I just wanted to please them. I wasn't the honest leader communicator that I am today, and I still have miles to grow. But once I saw the predictive index and how that was structured, I was like, okay, I need this type of player to be our craftsman, which is the sales facing player. I need this type of player to be our installer, which could be a little bit more quiet, reserved, analytical, just introvert. And then I need this player to run my books. And when I saw that, I started restructuring my team. As I restructured my team, I used that tool and I had a different hiring process, a system to bring in better people. Once I brought in better people, and what I mean by that is people more suited to win in the roles that they play. And so I moved some people into different seats. I moved some people off the bus. And I brought some new people on, and it comes down to people. Sometimes all you need is just one A player, and maybe there's some Bs around, and you don't even realize it because everything is relative and the water is fine. But as soon as I brought in different people, I'm like, oh man, this is making stuff happen, and then it keeps happening. So these days, and then I would also go back to identifying a real system. So there's a hiring system. And I think for me, that was relatively key to start making some shifts and bringing better people. And then there's the sales system, which anchors in the brand and just the delivery of the experience. And that's where I'm still focusing my time and energy on.
Yeah, it was interesting. I just had we did a employee review with one of our staff members, and I was going through that with her. And one of the questions is, how happy are you in your current role? And that score that she had scored it was less than I would have. And I realized like I had hired her on for a position that I needed fulfilled. And this was the role that she was hired on for. And I knew that she has, a lot more education and a lot more to give than the role that she was hired on for. So we had a big conversation about that. And my feedback was, I don't know that you are right for the position. And I mean that in the best way. But if you're in a position that you're not particularly happy with, then that's a conversation that we need to have, because then we need to talk about, all right, well, how do we get you into a position that you are happy with? Because if you are in a position that you're happy with and you're adding value, then you're gonna be lit up when you come to work, right? You're gonna put in those hours that you want. You're gonna get lost in your work. You're gonna get lost in the mission of creating what you need to create for the business, for your team. But if you aren't happy in that role because you're on the wrong seat of the bus, it's going to really start to affect your the way that you show up, the thoughts that you have, the dread that you have to show up to work on Monday morning, or the team meeting that you show up to have when like you can add more value than you're currently adding. And yeah, I love what you said there, but it is super relevant to a conversation that I just had with one of our team members today.
Yeah. So where's that going? What's the conclusion there?
So in that particular conversation, we have to continue having that. And so I had asked her, I said, well, what really drives you? And she had said, well, I'm going to school for my master's. I'm taking all these courses in marketing, HR. Like, I'm really excited about these particular areas. And so we started developing a plan, and that's the plan moving forward. It's like, all right, well, here's what we need to do for marketing. Here's the plan that we're working on. Where do you see yourself fitting in with the skill set that you have? If we're gonna transfer you into a different role, then I need to know, like, where are you going to take the reins over the next 60, 90 days? If we're to transfer you over here, what is the plan that you would implement? And I find that when you give people that freedom to design what should be versus what is, in their mind, it also gives you a lot of perspective. And not everybody's good at that. And there's certain things that I find certain processes that you have in place that are designed for a reason. And some people will just have a tendency of like, I don't like the process. It's not that easy. And they'll just try and switch things without actually giving it a shot. And that also needs to be trained on, because if you say a system isn't working, then you need to go back and say, well, where's the data, right? How many reps of this have you put in running this system as it's been designed? And if they say, you know what, I've tried it once, twice, and I'm just not getting the feedback that I want. Okay, well, let's go through that same process 50 times to a T, and then we can really have some data that we can back up and see whether or not this process is working. And then we can change that and we can implement it across the company as a whole. But you have to be very clear when it comes to systems, as a creator and the designer of the systems, that you need to know that they are there for a reason. Because usually it starts with the owner of the company, or the COO or a partner of the company that knows all the intricacies across all departments, right? So you understand hiring, you understand marketing, you understand sales, you understand delivery, you understand operations, you understand everything from, in your case, the installation of the garage doors and the importance of sweeping up and cleaning up after you're gone to make sure that your customers are happy. Like, you understand those systems. And so they're designed by you. And if you're bringing in and you're training somebody on those systems, and somebody right away is saying, hey, this isn't going to work, then they need to be able to provide the reason why. And so what I'm getting is, in a lot of cases, maybe they're right. Maybe this system is broken and they're seeing something through a different lens that you've never been able to see before. But it takes iteration over time to really gather that data to see if it's done. Otherwise, it does come back to people, and maybe they have an idea. But if they're looking to change stuff over and over and over again without actually sticking with the plan, then that becomes a different conversation.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that systems are really easier to identify objectively, right? You're using hard data. People, there's a little bit of objectivity and a lot of subjectivity. And at the end of the day, I have two main jobs. One is to get leads, and the other is to protect and build culture. And so if I have an individual that steps out of line of culture, I have to call it out. I cannot tolerate it. And this could look like an interaction, a conversation. It could look like, going rogue on a system. Like, if I tolerate it, and I used to, like, I was not a very good leader, and I give myself like a B- these days. So I've gotten way better. But I have to bring it out. I have to have the hard conversations. And, I recently moved a person off because sometimes you have the person that jumps on and they're in the wrong seat, but there's not really a good seat for them. Or they communicate in a way that just isn't in line with culture. Now, I can't get that on a black and white data sheet. That's a little bit of a call that I have to make as leader of the culture. Be like, this isn't a fit. And really, you're going to be better serving another corporation or company, and it's going to be better for you, better for them, and it's time to move on. Like, you have to make those calls at times.
Yeah, I've said it a few times on this podcast, and there's some decisions that can be made that are very black and white, but there's a lot of magic that happens in the gray, right? And that's where
magic happens in the gray. I like that.
That's where the nuances of what you're talking about require a person to evaluate the data, to make the decisions based on whatever information they have, and trust that they're going to make the right call. And if it's you that's making the right call, then you need to trust yourself that you're making the right call, or at least understand that if you aren't making the right call, then you're going to be okay with the fact that you made that call for those reasons, and find a way to rebound.
Yeah, full on.
Yeah, as well. Let me ask you, what does it take? I should have named this podcast "Let Me Ask You," because I found like that's a lot of ways we get into questions, and we're getting through this interview. There's always stuff that pops in my mind. And I was just like, let me ask you this. That should have been the name of the podcast. Anyways, we're not changing it. This comes back to that systems thing. Like we're not changing something that's good. There's been thought put into it. It's a reason. Welcome to the Open Concept Podcast. But let me ask you this: 8 figures, right? Or multi 8-figure exit. If this is on your books, in your future as a garage door company, what are you really looking to drive? And if you're looking for a buyer of a company, and they say that a company that is worth selling is usually a pretty fun company to run. But what do you need to put in place, or what have you put in place that's like really starting to make it an attractive business for somebody to purchase? What would somebody need to put in place to make their business a really attractive business for a buyer to get interested in?
Yeah, my understanding of that, and it's going to keep iterating as I learn more, but it comes down to systems and replicating success. What I mean by that is we're going to have some really key players. I've got key players on the team right now. I am a key player, but all of us need to be replaceable in order to be really attractive for a buyer. And in order to be replaceable, we have to have a good marketing system that brings consistent and regenerative leads. We need to have a sales system and process that brings consistent and regenerative conversions. We need to have an operations delivery system that delivers on the promise that sales makes over and over again. And we need to have a hiring and recruiting system along with training that just makes sure we have key players and a deep bench that can recirculate itself. Put those things together, now you've got an entity that you can grow that becomes really fun to run and becomes sellable because it's this constant regenerating organism, if you will.
So let me ask, where does that start? Because it starts with, I imagine, you and sort of a key hire, and then clearing up some space to start building the systems, and then bringing on another key hire. Where does somebody start if they're looking to do a deep dive in their business? They're looking at the constraints in their business. If anybody out there is listening to familiar with the theory of constraints, right? It's identifying the constraints that are in your business and attacking those to make sure that those are then solved to allow all the the remaining workflow to flow through and not restrict anybody else's ability or any other systems to open up and do what it is that they need to do. But where would you start analyzing your business if things are going pretty good, but you're having difficulty scaling? You're not quite where you want it to be. Does it start with an internal look of yourself? Is it like simply, hey man, we need to go and look at all of our systems together? Where does that start? If somebody's stuck in business, maybe they've plateaued at a revenue level, maybe you're not making the amount of sales that you're wanting to make. What do you typically turn to and look into?
Such a loaded question, Brandon. I would start by asking the question of that owner, what do you want? Because I think that's going to be the start. Let's put the stake in the ground of the end game. What do you want? You're looking to double, 10x, triple X. And then there's an assessment of reality. Are you in a market that can handle that? Are you in a vehicle that can do that? And that's going to start identifying where those constraints are. Do we need leads? Do we need better conversions? Do we need more people? Those are going to all bubble up with a couple of key assessments. And I think we identify, okay, where are we? Where are we going? Or where do we want to go? And those 2 points are going to create a separation. And in that separation is going to be the opportunity to build the machine. And whatever is needed is the machine. And so for Kooler, I have a goal of 10xing in 3 years, and that's going to set up multiple 8-figure exit. And I don't talk about that too often publicly because I'm still working through, like I could say it with a lot of certainty because I've done a lot of the internal work on it already. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's actually it. I don't know how it's going to happen. It's going to take acquisitions. It's going to take X, Y, Z. But then when I'm assessing Where it starts is my sales process. And then I go into recruiting and hiring and training. If I can get those two things on lock and deliver an exceptional customer experience and the Kooler experience over and over and over again from multiple people, game on. I'm good. I could take that system. I could go find the acquisition. I could move in the system. And now I've got arbitrage and I could do it again. Like I'm going to have to figure out the acquisition piece. And there's gobs of nuance that I'm going to have to learn there. I've taken some route there, so I know a little bit, but there's a lot more, and I will get to that in due time. Right now, I'm going to focus on this because that's my current assessment. If I can get my guys' conversion rates up, we get the experience to be very similar no matter who's delivering it, then I can replicate that, and it's a game on with a training process, and now I can go and really motivate it. But it takes that assessment of like, okay, where am I going? What do I really want? Plant the stake. Now we can assess reality. And from there to here, I've got X, Y, Z to identify, and I have to attack one at a time.
I love what you said with let's put the stake of that end game in mind and identify first of all is the vehicle that I'm in, the vehicle that's going to be able to get me there. And is that something that's exciting enough and really worth pursuing? Because if it's not, then you're gonna end up in a place where you're really struggling.
Yeah, and a lot of people are in that place, and maybe it's a fear of change, maybe it's whatever. But I think a lot of it comes down to just not being clear of what we want. It's a hard question to answer and get really clear on.
Matt, where can people find you if they want to connect?
Find Kooler Garage Doors. It's Kooler with a K. Door. Yeah, cool. It's all the social handles. We stay pretty active there. If you dig around in there, you can ultimately find Matthew Kuehlhorn. I mean, I'm in socials too, but Kooler Garage Doors is where the journey happens.
Love it. Awesome, man. Matt, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing all your wisdom. And you just got such a cool with a K attitude too. Talking with you today is just very, very calming. I love that, man. Appreciate you very, very much. And for all of our listeners out there that are still with us, I appreciate you as well. Thank you very much for sticking in there, and have a great day. Until next time, rock and roll.
Thanks, Brandon.